and brighter soon. Holding this faith, we are launching Saturday Talk series with experts presented by Presence, a national monthly e-zine since 2006 to promote positive journalism. And we're doing this in association with NGPL, Next Gen Political Leaders, an initiative of Presence to nurture and grow young political leaders in our country. I'm sure you'll enjoy this program, and I'm your host, Sukruti Narayanan. And this show is going to be a fun, interesting, and informative show for you all. This is our first episode, and this is titled How to Face Job Interviews. We have our expert, Ms. Susan Koshy, former General Manager of IDBI Bank, to share her thoughts and experience around this topic. I would like to share a few lines about her before we start. The main reason why we chose her for this topic is because she has interviewed so many candidates on campus and off campus for various positions. She's an excellent communication professional, an editor, and a wonderful anchor herself. She has rendered soft skill trainings for so many years for college students in rural and in semi-urban areas, in areas of engineering colleges and for business schools. Who else do you think will be apt to address this topic than her? Welcome to the show, Susan, ma'am. How are you doing?
Good, good. I'm good. Thank you, Sukruti.
So let's start with the show. We're definitely going to discuss about the do's and don'ts of the interview. But before getting into all that, my first question, when should one start preparing for the interview?
Thank you very much, Sukruti, once again, and thanks for this opportunity. Now, that's a very good place to start now. When you say preparation, it depends on how much time you plan to allocate for yourself to assess the job position that you're applying for and to determine its scope, to compare how you can fit in the job expectation, what the company is about, and then to assess yourself and your knowledge, and then finally rehearse how you will face the interview. So, preparation is definitely not short term. Grooming yourself in aptitude and attitude, that's an ongoing effort. But practice for the interview starts as soon as you get to know about the interview. Yes, Sukruti.
Fantastic.
Does that
So
answer your
when you
question?
say, oh, absolutely, because I definitely feel it is not a overnight process, and it should take some time. So now, when we talk about interview, so my first question goes to the resume. So how important is it to create the right resume as a two-pager document? I'm calling it a two-pager as so many of us create about 7 to 8 pages of a resume, and when it is not crisp, it loses its charm. So can you please, highlight about how to write a resume?
See, I would like to dwell a little more on this particular aspect. So give me a little time for this. You
Mm-hmm.
see, when you talk of resumes and you talk of 2 pages and long, some companies, they have prescribed format or form in which you fill up your resume. However, several companies say in the private sector, they leave it to the applicant to create his resume, but while taking care to include the basic essential information like contact details and the identity and the age and so on. And thanks to technology, one can access a variant of formats just a click away. Now, in case of a fresher, a brief about his academic performance with focus on the accomplishments rather than the marks, and accomplishments both in his academics and extracurricular activities that will highlight his special skills. Now, in case of a non-fresher, one would expect information about his job experience with focus on what he was able to bring to his job or his company. Just a narration of the job description is information, but enumerating what he was able to achieve on his job, that is the highlight that recruiters would be interested in. Now, talking of recruiters, Here, I would like to mention that recruiters these nowadays, they check the applicant's LinkedIn accounts to assess the applicant's trend of performance, achievement, and skills. So it is important to maintain an updated and informative LinkedIn account that summarizes key points about yourself. Some hirers even look up Facebook accounts, though it's an informal platform, to check for any red flags about the candidate. Now, resumes, they may be submitted to the company or to online job sites. And sometimes, in case of senior level recruitments, you submit it to specialized consultants who take care of this specialized category. In case of campus recruitment, the companies staff the placement department of the educational institutes for potential candidates to submit their resumes. I have been associated with recruitment in the banking sector. So the Institute of Banking Personnel Selection, that is IDPS, coordinates the recruitment in case of the public sector banks. Now, I would like to also add that after the first level of screening at the resume stage, most companies, they hold aptitude tests and personality-based tests as the second stage of screening and shortlisting candidates. Now, what are aptitude tests? They evaluate your logical and rational thinking, while the personality-based test that I was referring to, they assess your profile for specific job roles that the company may have to offer. Yes, Sukruti.
Perfect. So for people who are viewing our program, if you don't have a LinkedIn account, so it's very important. So please start updating your LinkedIn account, and that is actually a very, I think, even in the global scenario, it's a very important tip. And another question around resume, ma'am, because you mentioned like you've gone for like a lot of on-campus interviews as well. So mostly when it comes to college students, they just copy paste the resume. It's just like cut and copy, and sometimes they actually forget to edit even their own names. It's just copy and paste, and that is, it is embarrassing at times. But as an interviewer, when you go on campus, how do you feel about it? What is the first impression that comes to your mind?
Very simple, that you've not got your heart in it. It's something like studying by rote. You don't understand it. There is lack of interest. Most probably you've done this mass production of resumes so that, it just goes on. So there may not be a kind of a genuine interest. That is what I would take it. And there is no element of dedication or commitment to what you are looking for from a company. And that's not a good impression.
True. So a definite no-no for copying or mass production of your resumes? Definite no-no.
Absolutely.
Okay. So now as an interviewer, ma'am, so what does one expect from a candidate? So when I asked this question about your expectation as an interviewer, so I'm not just focusing about the college freshers or the ones who are just, entering for their first job, but overall. So what do you expect from a candidate from an interviewer's perspective?
Okay, as I had mentioned, my experience has been mainly in the banking sector, which means the public sector. But I will share the cues that are generic to any type of interview, be it public, private, or multinational. So let me give you a general outline about what an interviewer expects from a candidate. Um, Especially in case of freshers, yes, the academic knowledge. But then even if you are not a fresher, you are expected to know some important fundamentals and basics that you learned during your academics. You're not expected to forget your fundamentals. Now, if you say, I learned it long ago and have forgotten, it reflects on your approach that you just learned by rote without wanting to understand it or its applications. And that's not a good approach to your job, too. It reflects on what your approach to your job might be, too. I'll give you an example. I had interviewed a financial management graduate who qualified with distinction, and this is for a job at the bank. When he was asked which sides the assets and liabilities are displayed on a balance sheet, he fumbled and said, after a while, he said, I learned it 2 years ago and I've forgotten it. It's something like saying, I've forgotten the letters of the alphabet, but I've come for a job with an English journal. It's just like that. So that's why fundamentals are important. Next, it's general awareness. Now, we should be aware of what's happening in the current affairs around the world, our country, our locality. We should not be living in a bubble oblivious of what's happening around us because it affects us all. So we must be in the know of things. These issues could affect our job or our company too. So it's a good habit to keep track of the current affairs on the internet or any other source. Thirdly, knowledge about the company, the functions, its standing, so on and so forth, financials. Shouldn't you be curious to know about the company that you're trying to join? It's as simple as that. Then you have aptitude, which reflects your ability to handle the job or portfolio. You need to be aware of your job profile, or at least about what you have applied for. What are your strengths that make you suitable for the job, and those kind of things. And finally, attitude. Now, though it is enlisted last, it is important because it relates to your EQ, emotional quotient. Qualities like empathy, whatever is relevant for the job profile, empathy, the driving spirit or the positivity, enthusiasm, such leadership qualities. Now, you may ask, aren't you asking, are we asking you to be the perfect candidate? Really, not really. These are the elementary areas you need to work on and be comfortable about with yourself. I would look and I would emphasize the interview as a short window of opportunity to promote yourself as a candidate. It's something like a sales pitch. But one thing I would emphasize is you must be truthful. That's called integrity, which is a life value where there should be no compromise, where be it your job or your personal life. And I assure you, this one is not old fashioned or outdated. You
True.
see, another point is that you are one among so many candidates. How can you score over those other potentials so as to convince the interviewer to select you over the others? It's a challenge for the panel, no doubt, for the interview panel. So help them. And
Absolutely.
I also like to say now we are talking of interviews. There may be a single tier or multiple tier. Interviews may be one round, or it may be several rounds where in the subsequent rounds may be involving the HR, maybe the technical
Right.
team if the portfolio is a technical portfolio, and maybe with the team leader or stakeholder with whom one would be working. And I would like to emphasize that the interviewers are experienced and knowledgeable professionals. So respect them for their wisdom, experience, and knowledge. Don't try to bluff. Many people resort to that to bluff to impress. You must understand that they can understand you by a non-verbal communication. No doubt, just like bosses, you have various types of interviewers. You may have taskmasters who can be brutal in their questioning. There may be mentors who might prompt you periodically, or even guides who may lead you so that to help you in your interview. But all are there to help you along. They understand that it is a high pressure situation. So to that extent, you can feel comforted, and they do make you feel comfortable by sometimes asking you open-ended questions, letting you choose how to respond. Now, I wish to add that in the public sector and government job openings in India, there are job reservations at the entry point for special categories. This is just incidental that I'm mentioning, but relevant. Special categories like scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. You have other backward categories. And about a couple of years ago, they have introduced another category, a reservation for economically weaker section or candidates who come under the general category. So that's for information. Yes, please.
Perfect. So that is amazing, like overall view, Susan, ma'am. Because yes, when it comes to interview, we know bits and pieces, like what interview expects. But you beautifully, summed it up by mentioning about the fundamentals, which is the subject knowledge one needs to know, general awareness, know your company. So please don't miss about it. Like you should know about the company that you're applying for, aptitude, attitude, and integrity. So I think integrity, that sums up the whole thing about, you mentioned it's important to have integrity, like both in personal and in professional, that makes you as a person. Wonderful. Thanks for that, Susan, ma'am. And now, this is a common question. So I think, right, even when I was in my college, the first question is, tell me about yourself. So when interviewers ask that, it is actually, I would say, it's like a icebreaker, or that 2 minutes. I would say there are two extremes. One, when they say, tell me about yourself, we search for words, we fumble, we don't know what to say next, we are completely lost. Or there is another category, which when you say, tell me about yourself, they say, from my childhood, I was born here, I was brought up here, this is what I love to eat, my likes and dislikes. That is another extreme. So, what is this tell me about yourself, Susan, ma'am? So,
Okay.
what is going on with this topic?
Okay, earlier I had mentioned to you about an open-ended question. Now, this is an open-ended question. And this is an important question that you have posed because it is a favorite opening line for most interviewers, as you have rightly informed. Now, why is that so? Because it throws the floor open to you to pitch and present yourself as you want to be presented to the panel, while they are able to evaluate you as a person. So it makes sense for you to work on this question and on what you would like the panel to see in you. It's an opportunity. I told you about a sales pitch. This is an opportunity for you. You can make it or break it. Now, I have found, especially in most of the junior and fresher level interviews, many of the naive candidates, they respond to this question by stating their name, where they live, the composition of the family, and uh, and maybe what they're qualified in and those kind of things. Now, mind you, all this information, maybe except the composition of the family, all this is already available in the application, which the interviewers would have already gone through before meeting you. So, what's new that you are presenting? So, it is at this question where you promote yourself, highlighting your skills, your key attributes that could be contributory to the company, etc. But the buck doesn't stop there. I have candidates telling me, I'm committed, I'm optimistic, result oriented, etc., etc. That's not enough. You need to substantiate it. Many are unable to do so at that time. I can claim to be a lot of things, but I need to give real life instances to substantiate it. Here, you can apply the STAR behavior model. STAR in STAR standing for situation, task, action, result. You apply that to narrate how you dealt with a given situation, say in college or office or even in personal life, by planning the task to deal with it. Then you take suitable action and what the result of that action is. This helps to give a clear picture of your capability, your action, and the outcome as a result of your skill or your attitude or the strategy that you adopted. By the way, I like to add that your brief about yourself need not always be a success story. Yeah, because I told you as far as possible be truthful. So if you have faced failures, you can focus not so much on the failure, but on your learnings from it. And if you've been able to succeed the next time round from that learning, that's a positive highlight to project, and I'm sure it will impress. Also, this is an opportunity for you to convince the panel through your record of achievements and instances which you have enlisted why you are best suited for selection for the position that you've applied for, which means you need to know the profile of the position you applied for, which also means that you need to know about the company where you want to fit in as its employee. Will that answer your question, Sukruti?
Perfect. So, in simple, Susan, ma'am, so to be a star, we need to use the star model.
Yeah,
Can I put
you
that
said
that
it.
way? And
Absolutely, you said it.
also, tell me about yourself is nothing but sales pitch. So sell yourself well, get selected in interviews because it is not that tough, right? When someone asks open-ended question, I think yeah, it gives us room to. It's a sales pitch, simple, and it. So you mentioned, you can either make it or break it. So I
Yes,
think this session is just to make it, and yes, I'm sure
right.
our audience are not going to break it.
Yeah, exactly. I
So
like that optimistic thing. It's just that it has a lot of hard work and practice behind it.
true, true.
Because you need to know
So
yourself well and pick on your strengths to highlight it so that it doesn't look farce or false when you present it.
absolutely. And again, I think, we are, reiterating the points that we've already emphasized on know your company and, whatever we mentioned earlier. So that plays an important role while preparing. So if you're really serious about, cracking an interview, I think these tidbits will really make you stand out and shine. So another question, ma'am. So now I think you're emphasizing about like we're talking about resume and about tell me about yourself. So now I would like to ask you a question about communication because you're a communication professional yourself. So, how crucial is a role of communication when it comes to interview, and are we all taking it lightly? How serious do you think one should focus on communication skills?
Okay, this is a relevant point again.
Hmm.
What you know you need to convey, it's as simple as that. So communication is therefore very important. And communication is both verbal and non-verbal. Now, what do you mean by non-verbal? Non-verbal communication speaks, actually non-verbal communication speaks louder. And what it is your demeanor. That means the way you stand, the way you talk, your facial expressions, and more. For example, someone with a friendly demeanor might smile a lot and maybe look in the eye when talking to you. You may be an introvert or an extrovert or an ambivert, but all have to and do communicate. So be your natural best. I have noticed that candidates, especially from the vernacular medium of education, they generally seem to reflect a feeling of inadequacy because they might not be fluent in English, which might be necessary for some all India or a multinational company. But mind you, they are otherwise capable and they are comparable and often even better than many who are fluent in the English language. But these candidates do not realize this truth. As you had mentioned, I was a trainer in soft skills for a few years, covering professional colleges and management schools, that is business schools, mainly in the semi-urban and rural places in Tamil Nadu district. Now, during my session as a trainer, I used to tell the students, your mother tongue that you are fluent in is a language. You know it well. English is also a language. It would be more of a challenge to master it because the extent of its practical use is limited for you. Overcome it by researching more, practicing more. Thanks to technology, every facility is at our fingertips. You just have to tap them for resource support. Everything for you to learn and master is there in the internet, and most of them are free too. Yes, Sukruti.
Absolutely, absolutely. Totally understand. So now, ma'am, so yes, so from your answer, I understand communication, be it verbal or be it a non-verbal form of communication, it is really critical in an interview. So now, what will be your tips for students, like students, or for our audience in general who would like to improve their communication skills? Because yes, we understand language plays an important role. So how do we improve it? And do you recommend any type of books for one to read and to improve this upskill?
Okay. Okay, I would like to answer this with an example. Um, are you familiar with the movie English Winglish?
Oh yes,
Okay, it came in Hindi and Tamil. Now,
yes,
do you remember the character Shashi played by actor Sridevi?
Devi,
Yeah.
absolutely,
Now,
absolutely.
for the benefit of the other viewers who might not be familiar, this is about an Indian housewife who is not fluent in speaking English, and she's conscious of it because her family teases and taunts her about it. Now, she gets an opportunity to visit her sister in USA to help her sister in her daughter's wedding arrangements. Now, there she sees an opportunity to learn speak English just by chance through an ad, to learn English through an English language speaking institute. Now, you will notice that she had interest, perseverance, meaning repetitive endeavor, and persistence, that is, to be at it without giving up, because there were some challenges in the course of her trying to learn, some personal challenges. So there is dedication, there is determination, there's perseverance. That's why what I would suggest. You listen, you read, you practice. You provide for mistakes. Actually, you can laugh at the mistakes, but learn from them. And don't hesitate to ask for help. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. Even Google's there. But while on the subject of communication, I would like to add, you spoke about speaking, even writing, since we are talking about job interviews. Writing is important in any job, whether it's a project proposal or an email. And there's a world of difference between writing to your friend and writing an official email. Learn how to do it. Also, learn to read as a habit. Reading is an excellent habit. And would need to read a lot on your job. Also, another part of communication is to learn to listen, not just hear. Listen, you pay attention. Here is just a cacophony or some noises. Now, this could be part of your role as leader, colleague, as a marketing executive. And actually, I wanted to share something I came across in a book that I was reading recently. It was called Mindset by
Mm-hmm.
Carol Dweck. 1 minute.
Sure.
In the introduction, yeah, in the introduction, the author writes a little about grammar. I know and I love it, but I haven't always followed in this book. I have done it for informality, and I hope those who are particular about grammar will forgive me. Now, what I mean to emphasize is that in your effort to write well, don't miss the basic objective of conveying correctly and have conveying effective communication. Some write a lot of and use a lot of jargon, but fail to convey what is intended. So don't let the message be lost in your use of words. And you were asking about books. I wouldn't want to recommend any particular book. You can read those that can guide you for reading and writing. And also, you can take up books and good publications that have good standards of language so that you can learn how those words used, the vocabulary used, the expressions used, and the sentences used to express and convey effectively and learn from them. That's it.
Absolutely. So when you mentioned about reading, I just have one point in mind because when I was in school, my English teacher, she used to, ask us to read Know Your English. I'm not sure if we still have that in Hindu. Every Tuesday we used to have this column,
Yes,
Know
I
Your
remember that.
English.
It
And
used to be my favorite column, yes.
oh, wow.
Yes,
Okay. So our homework would be to cut that particular section, keep a track of, stick that in a beautiful scrapbook. And every day she emphasized, like she said, it's really important to learn a new word every day and use that when you're going to communicate with people. Let it be a normal conversation. As you rightly pointed out, Susan, the reason I am iterating this situation is because we used to think, oh, this is funny, or the grammar would not be right when we use the new words because we don't know how to, coin that word. But today, so many years down the line, if I say these words, I would have never learnt it if I felt shy.
right.
So beautiful point that pointed that don't hesitate to ask for help. And also, it is okay if people are going and English to English is a beautiful example for that. If they're going to laugh, yes, they're going to laugh. I think we should be a sport, laugh along with that, and learn from that particular mistake.
Right.
Beautiful. So I'll ask you one more question before we open the session to public because we have a 15-minute question answer session with our audience and
Right.
we have so many of them watching live. So just one question before I open it to the audience. So what next after winning the first job, Susan ma'am? So I'm sure with all the tips that you shared, our audience will crack the interview. They're going to ace it. I'm absolutely sure about that. But now, what next after winning the first job? So how does one climb the corporate ladder and create a positive impression?
Okay. I see a job interview somewhat like an arranged marriage proposal. Getting fixed up, pardon the expression, is just the beginning of the marital journey. How you manage your marriage is what matters more. So, also with a job. Interview provides you an entry into the company if you're successful. But to sustain, you need to learn about your role in the company, know about the company, understand the prospects, seize the opportunities for learning on the job. You need to do networking with the colleagues. And importantly, you need to learn to work smart, not just long hours. And communication is critical, both in a marriage and on a job. And when you are in employment, it makes sense to pay attention on how you carry yourself because you convey a lot through your body language and nonverbal communication. Now, there is a book called The First 90 Days by Michael Watkins, which is recommended by an HR professional. It
Mm-hmm.
divides your first few months of your job into 30, 60, 90 days. The first 30 days, you learn about your role and scope of work, the culture and the ethos of the company and its staff, and about your colleagues. Then you progress into connecting with the people and developing your network. But you will continue by constantly learning and upskilling yourself through you have in-house training opportunities, or even external platforms like online learning sites like you have the Udemy. And some companies, what they do is they do job rotation for the benefit of the staff.
Susan ma'am, I should say I just loved your example when you compared arranged marriage to, your job, because mine is arranged marriage. It's been 5 years and still I'm figuring out, yes, communication plays a key role.
It does.
Yeah, I would say with marriage more than with job, or yeah, with both. So thank you so much. And for the audience who might have missed, the book that you recommended, that would be First 90 Days by Michael Watkins. Is that correct,
Yes,
ma'am?
correct. That's right.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So finally, you recommended a book for us, if not, for, the resumes or anything, but yes, thank you so much, Susan, ma'am. So yes, the floor is open for, questions. Okay, I have a question here. Interesting. I'm not sure if this should be the question, because I'm sure with, the interaction with you, people will ace the interview. But still, I have a viewer asking, what will be the message for the candidates who could not crack the interview? What should one focus on? Okay, let's give an overall perspective. Both,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, my message is the standard one. This is not the end of the world. I'll tell you, there was this, I'll give you an example. It's just struck me. There was this candidate in one of my interviews. He was from the middle management position of a software company. Now, in spite of earning handsomely, he was well placed and earning handsomely. He was clear about making a shift to the banking sector because he was determined to get into a secure and more service oriented profession. He had appeared in interviews 3 times before and failed to make it. But he was well informed, smart, confident, he was cool, calm. And he said, I am learning. We asked him, and he said, I am learning from my previous failed experiences and improvising, and I will keep trying. That is the spirit that is very impressive. You need to ask yourself, what have I learned from this failure? How would I do differently for a different and positive result? That's how you should deal with disappointment.
So I hope Susan ma'am has answered your question. Be positive, keep trying, and yes, you will succeed one day for sure.
And learn from
Okay.
your experiences. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I have another question here. It says it is a very stressful experience when we appear for interview, and while having the interview conversation, everything goes blank and we do not find the right words most of the time. So how do we deal with such situations and how to handle stress? So that is another question.
Okay. Shall I answer it?
Yes, Susan ma'am.
No, okay. The moment you read out this question, I was reminded of my first interview as a candidate. No, my attitude
Wow.
was I was keen to get the position. So I got so stressed over it, made desperate efforts in the interview to score with my responses and make an impression. So what happened? I missed the bus because my stress made me forget what I knew, and my body language and non-verbal communication was not positive. So I left the room feeling miserable and disappointed, and that's how I learned my lesson. And the candidate who went in for her interview after I came out, she was confident because she knew her matter and she was sure of herself. And when she came out after her interview, she was beaming and she said, I enjoyed the conversation. And I thought, how can you enjoy a job interview? It's ridiculous. But the learning for me, before the next opportunity for an interview, I worked on my attitude and my approach. I built confidence about what I knew. And important, this is important, I did not let the fear of what I might not know overtake me. And instead, I talked myself into a confident and calm composure. I learned from the mistakes I made in my last interview. And this time, the experience of the interview was good. While I wouldn't say that I enjoyed the conversation, I wasn't cringing in my seat. I was comfortable. And I'm glad to boast that I was selected after that interview. I made it as a topper in that batch of candidates.
Wow. That's nice. That's nice. So maybe if I can, simplify it, take a deep breath, breathe in, breathe out. Will that help, Susan ma'am?
Yes, just breathe.
Because I remember in my first interview, I don't know. I'm like jittery. I'm nervous. I'm sitting at the corner of my seat. I feel like as if I'm going to fall. My muscles are aching. And yes, I think we all would have gone through that. But yes, it's nice to, think about those experience and relive that. Fantastic. Thanks for your answer. I hope Susan ma'am answered your question. Now, I have another question here. Oh, okay. So, do you have any funny candidate you still recollect from your interview experience? Maybe this is one of, your, I don't know. I can't see a name here. Maybe it's someone who you interviewed earlier. I'm not sure. But over
Okay,
to you, Susan, ma'am.
okay. I have a couple of instances. I won't call it funny, at least not the first one that I'm going to share, but it was a peculiar one. There was this lady candidate who was in her full term of pregnancy. She appeared so also. As she walked into the room, seeing her largeness, all the
Mm-hmm.
interviewers were initially concerned about her condition. But things settled, and as she sat down and the interview got underway, while concluding, the chairperson just asked her casually when she was due. And she replied, "Tomorrow, I'm on my way to the hospital right now from here." And
Oh, wow.
the chairperson became so anxious, she got up from her seat and told her, "Madam, please proceed immediately." And she summoned the assistant to assist her, the candidate, to the exit. I mean, one could sense the split moment of tension among the interviewers then as they became concerned whether she might develop pains sooner than later. So that was one
True.
instance. But
True.
I have one more instance that's come to my mind. I was on the other side of the interview table as a promotee candidate. You see, I rose from the ranks to my position as general manager. In the middle management level interview, after a generally good round between me and the interviewing panel, I was asked about a specialized financial term or expression I was unfamiliar with. So I said I did not know. So the interviewing executive continued with other questions. At the end of the interview, before leaving, I ventured to ask the executive what the specialized financial term meant. And after a pause, he looked at me and replied in teasing sarcasm, "Are you interviewing me or am I?" Oh boy, that was, I smiled an apology and I left the room after thanking. That was another experience,
Wow.
yes.
Wow. That was a stern yes. Are you asking me back? Okay, so maybe I have a question. So I'm going to pause. I'm sorry. I'm going to ask this question. I see another question there, but before that,
Mhm.
I'm curious, Susan, ma'am. So me as a marketing person myself, so I totally see, marketing is everywhere. So right from say I consider the whole interview process as marketing itself, where the company is trying to, market itself to choose the right candidate, and it's vice versa. So having said that, it's a whole marketing process itself. So, have you found any like, particular candidate very appealing, and have you selected that candidate like in less than a minute?
Okay.
Any striking,
Yes, yes. He impressed me so
incident?
much that he comes to the top of my mind as you ask me this question. I wouldn't say within a
Okay.
minute, but it's just as good as that. Yes, this it
Mm-hmm.
was this candidate who walked into the room. He looked smart and intelligent. He was very pleasant. He's courteous,
Mm-hmm.
and he was very
Mm-hmm.
sure of himself. He gave that aura,
Mm-hmm.
the look of confidence. So we set the ball rolling, asking him questions, and he answered intelligently, also explaining the reasons for the answer and the implications. He seemed to know almost all the answers, and he also made intelligent guesses if he was not sure, topping it up with explaining why his answers were what he guessed. So I knew that he was a unanimous selection for the interviewing panel. Then one interviewer, he asked him, is a random question. What is an important thing happening in the world today? He did not know. He could not even venture a guess. And then it came to my turn to ask him. And it was almost such a perfect session. I mean, it's like, no, I don't want to remove this flaw. So I asked him about there's an international organization called BRICS, BRICS. It's an association of five major world emerging economies. B, Brazil, R, Russia, I, India, C is China, and S is South Africa. So he responded in detail about it. And he concluded it saying, its meeting is being held that day in Brazil. So I looked at him and I smiled. And initially he was puzzled about my reaction. When I found that he could not connect, then I turned and looked at the interviewer who had asked him about that important international event. And he too turned and looked at him. And immediately it struck him about the answer. He realized he was asked about this event that was happening that day. That, how I interpret was that showed his alertness, to connect immediately, his knowledge that he knew about it, and his smartness. Thus, I gave
Absolutely.
a 10% performance. I was very impressed.
Wow. So, one important, up tip I could take from this particular conversation is, even if you don't know the answer, it is okay to try to guess and explain why you've guessed that. And again, there's a slight difference, if I may say that, Susan ma'am, because I don't know the answer. If someone asks a question, I'll confidently say the wrong answer. But then, yeah, that is not the answer. So that is, false confidence, like wrong
Yes.
information. So integrity goes on toss.
Yes.
So we can put it that, yeah, if you don't know the answer, try
Say
to guess
no.
the answer. I don't know, maybe I'll try to guess, and then if you give
Yes.
the explanation,
Exactly.
will that be good?
That's exactly what he said. That's exactly how he approached the question.
Oh, wow. Beautiful. So, I have another question here. Okay, this is a little different, and I would say it's quite interesting because, uh, okay, the question is, what is the role of pronunciation or slang? And will that add any value or difference when it comes to communication?
See, the
What
basic,
will your
yeah,
response?
okay, the basic purpose of communication is to convey so that the receiver is able to comprehend. Now, to that
Mm-hmm.
extent, if adopting a local slang or way of pronunciation, if that helps, then yes, go ahead. Then it will make a difference. An HR professional had told me that companies prefer candidates from the aviation and tourism, the hospitality sector for their customer care department because of the finesse in communication and approach. Now, this is in contrast to the recruits in BPOs who attend to
Mm-hmm.
customers over telephone for specific requirements. Their approach and skill are focused on voice modulation and accent
Mm-hmm.
because that is what their job requires. You understand what I mean?
Absolutely, absolutely. So it is not mandatory to, have a
Correct.
slang or
Mm.
try to, stand apart, but yes, beautiful. Okay, I understand that, it is important to communicate what we have in mind than, just go for slangs or, okay.
Yeah, if
So,
your pronunciation is going to cause a confusion, and maybe
mm-hmm,
you need to modify it so the person will understand. So I think that's quite understandable.
mm-hmm. Okay, so I have a question here. So, it is from Prino Shankar. She's asking, when you take up a job after many years of taking a break for rearing children, so what can we say in the interview to impress them about the interim break?
Well, I had a candidate too. There was a lady who came in. She was in the software company. Then she took a break after marriage, and then she had children. And then, after a couple of years, or a little more, she came back. She's eligible age-wise and otherwise, and she attended the interview. That prima facie will not be a minus point, will not be a minus point, because in this case, I remember again, it is just certain candidates who come to the top of your mind when you refer to certain questions. She was impressive. She prepared well. She knew about it because she prepared for an interview in an area where she's not worked because she's from a software company, but she took the pain to study, to learn, to know, understand what it is. And her answers were not studying by rote. She understood the fundamentals, she understood the principles, and she took the pain to convince us that she knew what she was saying. And taking a break is not by itself a crime if you can carry on the show. And we gave her top marks. So I don't know if
Absolutely.
that
And
answers your question, but yeah, that's how I would
no,
put it.
I think that is irrelevant, Susan ma'am, because I've had breaks as well. I had to take like a couple of years break, and I would say it is in our mind because initially I thought I'm not sure, if market is changing. I'm not sure. I actually went to another domain. My expertise was elsewhere, so I'm like I'm not sure. But again, what worst can happen? You might be fired. Nothing more than that. And that is an opportunity to learn again. And I think the courage is really important, right? we can a positive attitude, I can do it, that actually plays a very important role. And again, a sensible can do attitude is really important, not just like yes, I can do it. And when people ask what are you going to do, I'm like, I don't know. That is not how it should be. It should be a focused can do attitude. And I think that will be helpful. And Susan, ma'am, this is a 45-minute show, and we are for we are at 5:45, so we would like to conclude this show. And yes, that was the last question. And thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us, Susan, ma'am, because I've actually seen a lot of inputs from people watching it. They say it's thought provoking, it is really lovely. And I
Thank
must
you.
say, you were giving a lot of beautiful, examples, and I thoroughly enjoyed English Winglish and, marriage and interview put together, integrity. That was a key takeaway for me. So, whatever it is, whether it's your personal or your professional, integrity, positivity, do your homework, know your company, because if you're knocking the door for an opportunity, you should know which door you are knocking at. You can't just knock a door and maybe if it's not for you, you're wasting your time and the interviewer's time. So that was when, yes, Susan.
So does that mean I cracked the interview?
You passed with flying colors.
Thank
You
you.
passed with flying colors. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And
Thanks a lot
I
for the.
thoroughly enjoyed and hope it was the same with you.
So absolutely. Thank you very much, and a very good evening to you and the rest of the audience. Bye bye.
Fantastic. So next week at the same time and the same window, stay tuned. You're going to listen to Dr. Jagannathan Ramaswamy, who's going to talk about interesting insights on what next or opportunities after plus two. So hope you all had a lovely time as we did. And this is your Suk signing off until next week. Don't forget, next week, same time, same window, 5 to 5:45 IST. Stay